Okay, I'm live. I'm not really sure how to connect you now.
Okay, can you, so in the bottom right, there should be a present now. Can you present the entire screen or?
Present, okay, 1 second. Present now, the entire screen. Okay. Is that working?
No, I'm on the YouTube live and I don't see you, but let's see, 1 sec.
Guys, please be patient with us. We're trying to figure out how to make this work, okay? Next time it will be a little smoother.
Okay? Next time it will be a little smoother. Yeah, sorry about that. Next time it will be a little smoother. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so it looks like they can hear me, but they can't see me. So I think this is okay. I do apologize. We'll just have to do the interview without the video. But I think that's okay. You know, you have my picture. And, you know,
no, I'm trying to.
Sorry.
Okay, I don't think. Maybe on the phone it'll be better, but I'm not sure.
No, at this point it's already 15 after.
Okay.
I think we should go ahead and start the interview.
Okay.
Yeah,
let me just see if everybody can hear you. Can you guys hear him? Let me know if you can hear Michael. Hi, Lolly and Red Brandy Cherries. Let us know if you can hear us. Okay, they can hear us. Both of us. So can you hear me and Michael?
Yeah, I went on YouTube to the, okay, thank you,
brilliant.
Guys. Sorry about that. So sorry about that. You know, we were trying to, so like Halima said, this is our first time. We were trying to, I'm not sure what happened, right? So it's just, you know, sorry. So, okay, so while Halima is taking care of the posting, I'll just quickly talk about what the plan was. So I'm Michael from Michael's Business English, and how Halima and I met, we met through a community led by Gabby Wallace. She's an English teacher, and Halima and I are in this group because we are learning how to build and expand our teaching English business. And the reason I thought it would be great if Halima and I did this interview was, even though we both teach English, we are in many ways on different sides of the spectrum of our process.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that, if you saw Halima's live yesterday, I only saw a little bit of it, but it was amazing to watch because, as an example, she was assertive and she called out something in the interview that she thought was, was, I guess, morally wrong or bad, which was great. And that's almost like the opposite of my style, because that kind of behavior, while being able to speak fearlessly, is very important socially. In the workplace, we have to be much more careful with that. So I thought it would be a good idea, because I've had students who, in my experience, while I was able to get them the motivation they needed, I feel like they would have gone farther and faster through Halima's training, because they really needed the inspiration and the courage that would come from like Halima. So
well,
thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Michael, for saying that. I didn't even, it was just a 2-minute thing. I didn't even, plan for it to happen. But I feel like, for me, I have some values that I always, I thought about, what are my values? What are my morals? What do I stand for? And so when I did the activity, I realized that I really I stand for women's rights.
Yes.
And so that's something that I truly, truly feel deeply for. And so when I see another woman being spoken to in a bad way or being told what to do, I just can't like sit back and not do anything about it.
Right. That's great. Right. And I'll tell you, like, I am similar in that fashion, but in my experience, that kind of behavior will get you fired. Right.
Wow. Could you say more about that?
Yeah. So let me tell you some examples. Right. Some of the first jobs I've had, whether you're a man or a woman, by the way, in America, regardless of, so let me back up a little bit. Right. So I teach business and hospitality English, right? And part of the reason I do that is that I've had experience in both, right? I've worked in restaurants since I was 16, and then I graduated college, and I now work in financial services as a data analyst and consultant. But while there are differences in the environments, to some extent, there is one core commonality, and that's the importance of likability and the importance of getting along, which I think will surprise people because America's known for its bravado. It's known for people like Kanye West and the pop culture.
Yeah.
But in practice, if you assert yourself incorrectly, if you speak up, even the way you did it yesterday, which was absolutely correct. You had every right to stand up for that woman. Whatever, I didn't fully understand what happened, but you stood up and said that's not okay. You could get fired for that because in corporate environments, we have to be.
Yes. No, and I completely understand that. And I think, in my opinion, that's why we have all these like problems like the Me Too movements, you know, where women stay quiet, they don't say anything. And then what happens is they just have to kind of carry on with their life, and they accept abuse, they accept like misconduct in the workplace. And so like because of the fear of being like let go, right? And so that's why we have this kind of culture of not saying anything. And so I feel like now it's changing. Now more people have the courage to speak up when something is wrong.
Yes, I agree. However, what I've seen in the environment is, despite having the courage, and I guess what I would say is my focus and specialty, right? I teach English like you and like most teachers, but my focus, while I do teach assertiveness skills and some training, my focus is more on calibration and mindfulness. So as an example, I'll give you an example of a situation I had a few years ago. I was being picked on. I had a coworker, I don't know why, but she kept trying to force conversation with me. She would come up to me and make fun of me for whatever I had on my phone. She'd interrupt me in meetings. And there's a part of me that's like, well, I should express myself and stand up for that because I shouldn't be harassed. What I've learned in the workplace is that that's true. Like you can do that. And to some extent, it's calibrated. You should do that. But what I found is that it's a very tight rope. It's very easy to fall off. I'm not sure what the term is called. You know, it's a thin line. It is very easy to get fired if you do it correctly. And the first time I saw this was I went to my boss like over the course of a year multiple times because I was being harassed, and he came back and said, "You're not being a team player," right? Which is not fair.
Wow.
And I would never encourage someone to stay in that kind of environment.
No.
But I would also never encourage someone to risk getting themselves losing their job, right? So you have to decide: is it more important to keep this job while you can find a better environment, or is it better to speak up, risk getting fired, and then you can't pay your rent? So that's where my specialty comes in, is more teaching English in the context of softer social skills, like choosing better word choices.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think in my point of view, if you're being bullied in the workplace, like that's something that I won't stand for. It's first of all, I think you have to have the belief in yourself. This is just like my point of view. It's like you have to have the belief in yourself that you're able to find another job, and if the place that you're working at, you're getting bullied and no one's doing anything about it, and somebody's telling you to be a team worker or whatever, like a team player, I think there's something wrong there with the management. And like, I don't think it's a healthy environment to be in. If you're in a workplace, you're being told what to do, like how to dress, or like, you know what I mean, being harassed or bullied. I mean, personally, I wouldn't stay in a place like that. So
exactly. Like, I agree. And, I definitely encourage all my students to consider all options. But while we're in the workplace, right, we have to do both. We have to balance protecting ourselves, but we also have to balance saying, what will I stand for? Will I stand, as you said,
what's important to you? Exactly.
So, yes, agreed. Okay. So thank you so much, Halima. So the point of this call, what I wanted to do was do a Q&A so that I could share my audience with Halima and learn more about her and show my students what other teachers are like, get some different experiences. So without further ado, let's get started.
Let's get started. So that wasn't the start, guys. Now it's the start.
Sorry about that.
Hello, everybody. I can see all my students. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your support, everyone. So let's begin.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so the first thing I'd like you to do, Halima, is can you please tell us about yourself, tell us about your background, and how you became a fearless learner yourself.
Okay, so I came to England when I was 9 years old. If I back up, I didn't receive education until I was 9 years old. I'm from Somalia. We left Somalia because there was civil war at that time. Civil war, guys, means when there's conflict and there's fighting between the people within the country. So it's internal, okay? So there was civil war happening in Somalia, and so my family fled the country, so left the country to go to Saudi Arabia. And I was in Saudi Arabia from the ages of 2 until 9, and my parents were looking for education. So, and when they couldn't find education, not because there wasn't any education, there was, they couldn't afford the education, and B, like, they needed documentation in order to go to certain schools. So my mom found a place that was for orphans. So children with, orphan means a child with no mother or father. So they found a school, and then she realized that she couldn't afford to go from her home to the school. She couldn't afford the taxi cost. So she just said, okay, so we have a school, it's far away, but we can't even afford to go there. So like, education was something very, very important to my mother. And that's why she decided to try and go back to Somalia. And then when we went back to Somalia, things were even worse. And so then she had to try and find alternative ways to receive an education. I think the biggest thing was, like, for her was education, nothing else. It wasn't like, oh, like, be able to live in a good life, have a house, and be able to work. It was just education, like being able to educate her children. That's what, like, pushed her to try and find a better life. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, you asked me, how did I become a fearless learner?
Right.
So I came to London when I was 9 years old, and I didn't know how to read or write. I was illiterate. I didn't receive any education whatsoever. So then I started school. It was year 4, and that's when I started learning English. And I learned English when I was, I'm reading the comments. Can you see the comments?
Yeah, I can see the comments.
Okay, awesome. All right. So that's why I was like, okay, like, I started learning English. They used to teach me English. So every time a teacher would come into the classroom, they would say, Halima, come with me. And I didn't want to leave the classroom because it meant I was different. It meant that I needed help. And so that made me feel super, like, inadequate, like I didn't fit in. every time the teacher came in to help me with the English, instead of accepting that help, I felt like less because I didn't know how to speak English. And so I always felt like that was going to be it. It was never going to change. I was never going to learn English until like one day I remember sitting in class. I was in year 5, and the teacher always gives, like, every month they give certificates. So for recognition for hard work. And I was sitting there and I remember exactly what I was saying. I was saying, oh my God, like, this is I'm never gonna get recognized. This is never gonna happen for me. So I was sitting there, literally like playing with the table. I was like, this happens every month, and I never get recognized, until the teacher did recognize me, and she said, this recognition goes to the person that learned English in 1 year and is able to communicate. And then she said my name, and that was like the best day of my life, because I was like, I'm finally getting recognized. I'm finally learning English. So it was such an amazing like experience for me, you know, to be able to be recognized for something that I thought would never happen. So yeah.
That sounds amazing. That congratulate. I mean, I want to say congratulations, although that's like years ago. But that is, I gotta tell you, like that story was, you know, wow, that's really cool. What was your process exactly for learning English? So it sounds like you learned English like within a year. Like, how did you do it? What was the secret?
So like when I look back, there was no choice, right? So when you speak English every single day and you needed to communicate and you need to speak to people, or else you don't survive. So when I analyzed it, like, I was, you know, pushed into the deep end. What does that mean? That means, like, if you can swim or if you can't, it doesn't matter. Like, you're in the water and you're trying to survive, right? And so you are forced to learn how to swim, and you're forced to communicate. You're forced to use every single word that you know, whether it's correct or not. I made so many mistakes. I know I made lots of mistakes, because when I think back, students were constantly correcting me and telling me that I was like, you know, I'm making mistakes, but that didn't stop me from communicating. I made the mistakes. I was scared, but I did it anyway. I communicated anyway. Do you get it?
Yeah. So even though you were afraid, you knew you had to communicate anyway, and that's what caused you to become become better speaking English.
Exactly. And also, like, what was I gonna add? Sorry, my mind went blank, guys. You know, when you're thinking and your mind just completely goes blank. What was I talking about? So when I guess, no, mind went blank. Sorry, guys. Bloopers.
What was the secret sauce? What was
okay? So my brothers and sisters spoke English together at home. So we all spoke English together, and part of the reason was because we didn't want my parents to understand what we were saying, but it ended up like us just communicating in English the whole time. So we would speak to my parents in Swahili, but then we would like speak to my mom and to each other, my siblings. We would speak in English. So again, not only were we talking in English outside of the house, we were also talking in English inside the house.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So that's what I've noticed too with a lot of non-native students, is if they're not speaking English outside of class, if they're not speaking in the house, that's gonna cause challenges with learning.
Yeah.
So that's really cool that you had that opportunity.
Yes. So like, I just want to step aside and just tell the students that are listening, thank you for being here, guys. I'm reading your comments. I want to say that if you're not living in an English speaking country, you have to recreate the environment, like, so you're immersing yourself in English. So a lot of listening, a lot of practice every single day. You can't just, you know, decide that you want to like practice a little bit and then think that that's gonna, it will help. Every little bit I think helps, but if you want to see that improvement, it has to be a daily thing, has to be part of your life. Okay.
Okay, wow. So that was incredible. But can you tell us, Halima, what was your motivation and why did you decide to become an English as a second language teacher? I mean, if you weren't going to do that, what would you have done instead?
So the reason I became an English as a second language teacher was because I wanted to travel, and I also wanted to help people. So the way I started was, my first job, I remember it was CSR, so corporate social responsibility. For those of you who don't know what that is, that are watching, it's when you're every company has to do something to give back. And in the university I went to, they hired me to be in that department. And so what I did, the way I got into English is I was helping students that were learning, that were, you know, they didn't have anything in the world. And I was helping them learn English so that it can give them a better life, better opportunities for the future. And so that's how I got into teaching English. But my degree is actually on in computer science.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to do that. I love computers. I love everything about them. But now I've kind of taken that with my knowledge of, you know, using computers and put it together. And now I'm doing everything online, teaching English, and yeah, it helps like to have that knowledge.
That's really cool. That's incredible. Can you tell us more about your background and experience? So aside from doing the corporate social responsibility, what has been your experience learning how to teach English, and what has been some of the highlights? What has been some of the challenges? What has been your process? How did you come up with some of your training styles?
Okay, so first of all, I want the reason, when I started my business, I sat down and I said, what do I want? And the reason why I started this business is because I wanted to teach as many students as possible around the world, and be able to reach more students than I was reaching at the time. So at the time, I would have about 20 students in the classroom. And so I was like, what if I could teach and it would reach a bigger number? I could be teaching students all the time. While I was sleeping, students would be learning from my videos. And I thought that is just like the most incredible thing I could ever think of. And so like, I want to be able to help as many people. And also my Blackboard English gives 10% of any money that comes in, the, you know, the, not just the profit, the whole amount. So from the beginning, whatever money I make, I take off 10%, and that's the money that goes, I give money to orphans in Kenya, Mombasa, and it helps them with education. So it provides them with just, you know, right now my company is not very big, but it helps them with like books and pens and so on to, you know, help them with their education because they don't have parents to take care of them. So I'm so proud of that. And the fact that I can do that with my business is, and hopefully in the future, I'll be able to do more of that kind of work. This is what's close to my heart.
That's very generous of you. It's very thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed.
Sorry, I wanted to say, and I'm not saying it to like show off. And actually, I don't even like to talk about it. Not many people know I do that. But I wanted people to know about it because I want them to know the kind of business that I am. I'm not somebody that's like only after profit and, you know, making money. I want to do more with my business. I want to do more to help people. Yeah.
Because I was going through your website and I didn't see anything about that. So I was like, oh wow, you're very humble for just letting us know now.
I know. I hate talking about it, guys. Like, and I remember it was a student actually I was talking to, and I was telling him about like, you know, how I do that. And he's like, why are you not telling everybody about it? Like, you know what I mean? People need to know that your company does more than just like, you know, take money from people. And I said, I feel super embarrassed to tell people because I don't want to say, oh, look at me, I'm giving money to orphans. I want it to be like, you know, something that's I'm doing, but I don't want to show off about it. But I also want students to know that the bigger I get, the more I can do for other people, the more videos I can create, the more time I have to invest or money to invest in software and things that I need. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think your style, this is the right way to go because you're right. There are plenty of people who take advantage of that. They use it as a publicity stunt. And you, on the other hand, you seem very genuine. This is something that's, like you said, close to your heart. It's very important. And it's something you do because you want to, not because you get any like monetary benefit. It's simply because it's something that you feel is important to you.
Yes, it is. And I think every business owner needs to have a why, the reason they're doing their business. And I mean, just for me, the why is like to do more. Like I feel like we've all been put on this earth to give back. And so like if I can give back in the smallest way, this is like I'm living my dream. That's how I feel, you know, like my dream is to help as many people as I can.
Okay, yes, I can appreciate that. Like I know what you mean about the why and the importance, and you know, mine's is not the same, but it's very similar. Like my motivation, right? So my background is I work in financial services, but now that I'm teaching English, my goal is to change my entire career path, which is how I got into teaching English in the first place. So I do agree that your motivation and your why is really important when it comes to building a career and your motivation. Whereas I see people who teach English and they don't care about the student at all. They show up, they don't do any work, they don't participate, they don't encourage a student, they don't do anything that I've seen some of the teachers like you do. I've seen some of your work and it's been some of the YouTube channel and I see the effort you're putting in. And it's just wow. This is like, you know, it's like night and day is the difference of teachers and why that motivation is so important.
For motivation, like I had a period of time where I would create videos and I was so excited and energetic and then it would fall. So for me, mindset is so important. You know, I feel like if you don't take care of your mind, you can fall off the wagon and not continue. So for me, mindset is something that I work on every single day. Every single day, whether I'm happy or I'm sad or whatever it is, like I have to do it every single day because you need to take care of the mind and what's happening inside your mind. That way you're always energetic and motivated and so on.
What kind of things do you do for mindset training, if you don't mind me asking? That's, for lack of better words, I've never heard anyone describe it that way. I understand to an extent. I have some similar stuff, but I think it would be great if we could share what your process is.
Okay. So I have a few coaches that like I've been taking coaching. So coaching allows you, like once you take coaching, it teaches you how to basically self coach. And what I do is I have, and I think some of the students know, this is, I'll show it to you. This is my book for mindset. I call this the mindset book. And so the process is like, first I make goals in order to, you know, reach those goals, like long-term goals and short-term goals. And the second thing is when I look at something and I'm saying, okay, I want to be able to say, for example, you guys, I want to be a native English speaker. If you want to do that, then your brain starts to like go crazy, right? You're like, oh, I can't do it. You can't do that. You're not living in an English speaking country. You're not going to school. You're not doing this and this and this. So you have these thoughts that come in your mind. And so what I do is like, when I feel like I can't do something, I write like at least 50 ways I can do that. So for example, I can't practice English. What do you do when you can't practice English? So you have to ask yourself, how can I practice English? As soon as you let your brain know, like if you ask a good question, usually you get the answers. Like, you have to let your brain do the work. And so I write it down, and I write down all the different ways that I can do that thing. And so that's one way, like that's one part of coaching. Another part is downloading, I call it, is downloading all the thoughts onto paper. So sometimes you get negative thoughts, and I just, when I can't deal with the negative thoughts, like again, in the morning, I will ask myself this question: what are you feeling? What are you feeling? This question allows you to understand how your mind works. And so that you are able to say, okay, now I'm acknowledging what you're thinking. You're not just ignoring it or suppressing it. You're not like putting it aside and trying to ignore it. That's how depression happens. That's how, people get demotivated, because like, in my opinion, people just, you have to do the hygiene part. Like, you have to take care of the mind. And this is how I do it. I make sure I know what I'm feeling. And sometimes when I'm feeling bad or shame or anything like that, I allow myself to feel it, because I feel like emotions, there's a reason for emotions. It shouldn't always be happiness, right? It shouldn't always be one particular thing. You should have a combination of sadness and happiness. And so when I feel sad, I like to be kind to myself and understand why I'm feeling sad, and truly understand where the feelings are coming from, and deal with it like that instead of ignoring it.
Okay, yes. I mean, I got some. I don't want to go completely off topic, but I do have to say that was very. How do I say this? There was a lot of information. I do recognize some of the stuff you said, so I don't do everything you said, but I think it is important for almost all students to try something similar, or to experiment. And like, so for example, I have a journal too. I don't have I don't do the exercise that you do, which is how do I do 50 ways to solve this problem. But I have similar stuff, such as like there's an app called 5-Minute Journal to show gratitude, and that was the difference that made a difference. The moment I discovered gratitude, that was how I dealt with my kind of challenges.
Oh, gratitude is everything. You really have to be grateful for everything around you, like the smallest thing as well, right? There's another thing as well, like gratitude, and also if you want to try this, you can try appreciating yourself.
Yes, that's one of the things. I won't go into details about that one, but for recommended resources, some of the things I've gone through is books like Shame and Guilt and Drama of the Gifted Child, The Body Keeps Score. But I think we're on the same page. You know, when we talk about have you read any of Brené Brown's work? Have you gone to Tony Robbins? I think we have similar kind of spheres of influence.
Definitely,
definitely. She gave in the mindsets. Like I think we have some stuff in common, and I think for all of you guys watching, I think everyone can benefit from what Halima is saying with these kind of exercises that will help you deal with whatever challenges or anxiety or self-defeating beliefs or thoughts you have. Because what I see from a lot of native English speakers is that they give up. They just say, I can't, it's impossible, it's too hard, this, that, this, as it. And for example, I have one student who all I asked him to do was submit his resume. And it took him 3 months to actually apply for jobs. I mean, he finally got the courage, but I think he would have gone farther faster if he had this kind of coaching and this kind of support. This is how I can, do this despite the fact I'm not confident in my English.
Absolutely, exactly, and that's part of like my course as well. My course is like focused on confidence building. The enrollment is closed now, but the idea is like it incorporates this mindset stuff with teaching, with learning English, and I feel like it's one of the most important things, like you said, to build confidence, to stay motivated, and so on.
Can you talk a little bit more about your teaching style? I mean, how unique compared to some of the other styles out there? I think you touched a bit about it, but I think just for brevity's sake, let's talk a little bit more about your style.
Okay, so I focus on vocabulary. For those of you who are following me, or your subscribers on YouTube, you probably know this, but I focus on what's the word? Vocabulary and chunks and phrases. And I feel like focusing when you're learning English and you focus on chunks and vocabulary and so on, it helps you communicate fluently. And that's how I learned English. And I didn't learn grammar until way later, until I was like 25. That's when I learned grammar. So focusing on vocabulary and enriching your vocabulary is super, super important. And I just mentioned this tip just the other day, is like when you learn a particular vocabulary, find out how you can use it in different ways. So usually each word has more than one meaning. More than one meaning, or more than one way to use the vocabulary word, the word that you are learning. So I call that killing two birds with one stone. The reason I say that is to utilize. So if you're just learning how to use, for example, a recent word, break up. Break up can be used in many different contexts, and all you have to do is learn break up, and then you just learn how to use it in different ways, but it's the same word. And so you're not sitting there like learning a million words and only learning one way to use those words. So you're making the words work for you. Okay,
that's an interesting way to do it. And I think like you said, it's very important to recognize like, the way words and the phrases, the chunks can come out is there can be more than one meaning. And like you said, like the grammar, it's important, but as you just showed, it's not required. You learned English when you were 9 and you got that certificate, and then you learned grammar when you were in your late 20s, right? So I think one thing I've seen is, I think it's called success over perfection. I think that's like the critical thing in your style, right? It's getting your students confident and building the courage to speak, focusing on the vocabulary and the phrases.
I feel like this encourages them to do more. When you feel confident in yourself and be able to, communicate without feeling scared, without feeling like you need to be perfect, that's when you develop a lot faster. That's when you sound natural. That's when you sound, fluent, and be able to communicate with with any person, and you're not scared that, oh, that's a native speaker, I can't speak to that person. It doesn't matter. Your idea, my goal is to teach students to communicate. That's the most important thing for me.
What is the number one problem you see consistently with these students, and how do you go about solving it? And it sounds, I think we touched a little bit about it. Again, you just said getting your students to communicate, giving them confidence and courage. Is that the number one problem, or is there something else that comes up?
So a lot of students will like spend a lot of time learning vocabulary or grammar, whatever it is, but they never take action. This is the biggest problem I've seen students. They're addicted to learning English and not taking action.
Okay.
And so this is the biggest problem. And this is, I'm always encouraging my students to take action, to do something about the words that they're learning and so on, and actually use it. Like go and speak to someone using the same vocabulary or the same topic and so on. Don't just absorb. And a lot of you, I know you are addicted to learning and not doing. You need to do.
I like how you call them out. Like, like that's a good point. I've seen very similar stuff with some of my students. Is they'll take the placement test, and they will come out, as you said, like they're addicted to learning, and they can get a very high fluency score, right? But with the speaking portion of the test, that's when the tires come off, and you start seeing like, wait a minute, like there's something going on. Even though they were able to get a high fluency on the other parts of the test, on the speaking portion, they struggled. Interesting.
And that's the ultimate goal. Like for most of my students, it's I want to be able to speak fluently, and that is the main goal. And so that's why I feel like that's the problem that they have, is because they're not taking action. They're not having 2 or 3 partners, practicing with different people on a daily basis. They don't think it's okay. Like many students, I feel like they're either lazy or they're too shy to contact people to practice speaking English, or they just don't have the time. This is something I always hear: I don't have the time. Guys, I want to say, like, if you prioritize something, you always have the time.
Let me see. I know you mentioned that the class is not open for enrollment, but can you talk a little bit about your course?
Sorry, I was just reading the comments. Sorry.
So I said that I know that you had mentioned earlier that your course is not open for enrollment. I think you just started class. Just started because it's a live class, right? So is that correct?
Yes, it's a live class.
Going on. Can you talk a little bit more about this class? How is this different from some of the other stuff you've done in the past? What's the purpose of this class?
So I used to do one-to-one with students, and now I went and decided that I wanted to create a 1-month course that enabled students to focus on their English and develop confidence and be able to have an amazing experience with it. So some of my students, I think it was Julia who said this to me. She said, like, I didn't expect you to be there throughout the course. So I was like, oh, okay. She expected to buy the course, watch the videos, do the activities, but never like kind of see me there. And so she, part of what makes me different is that I'm there with you from day one till the end. If you have any questions, if you need help, if you need extra guidance, I'm there to help you. And every time we do the course, I'm always like finding ways to enhance the experience for the students, because I'm learning as well. It's not just the students that are learning. I'm learning what their needs are. Like, so this time around, I'm including goal setting workshop, and also a confidence building workshop with a coach, with a real life coach. So
oh wow, that's a nice bonus.
It is a nice bonus, and I was like, guys, it's a great bonus. I don't think they got it.
Yeah, so I'm learning Japanese right now, and it's like the opposite of what your class does. I got one of those interactive audios, and it's cool. It works for me because I'm comfortable with speaking languages, but it doesn't have the benefits that your course has. It doesn't have having an instructor who's there, right, who's basically right next to you the whole time.
Yeah.
It doesn't offer these additional workshops, especially goal setting workshops. It's like, oh, I would never have thought of that. That's an interesting feature to have, and I think that's very useful when learning a language. So you can say, oh, by after 30 days, I want to maybe have a 2-minute conversation without being nervous, or maybe
absolutely. That's so good that you mentioned that. So we have long-term goals for the workshop and short-term goals. So you need both. You need to have a massive goal, and a short goal. That way it's manageable. And when you have these 2 types of goals, you're able to break things down and be able to actually achieve that massive goal, which is, I know, it's to become a native English speaker eventually. But how do you become a native English speaker? Do you do nothing and expect it to happen to you? No, you have to have a plan. Do you know this quote where it says, every road leads to, so if you have a destination, every road leads to that destination. But if you don't have a destination, there's no road that goes there. You know what I mean? You don't go anywhere.
All right. Yes, and I've noticed that with my students too. I think, like you mentioned it before. Before I continue, everyone watching, if you have any questions for Halima, please put them in the chat box. And I've noticed that too with some of my students, is that they're learning English, but they don't have a specific goal, right? So they're just learning, and they're learning information that's not applicable for them.
Exactly.
So as I've gotten training on how to teach hospitality English, my mentor gave me some examples. That one of her clients was a hotel. They had hired an English teacher to teach the guest room attendants English, but you're gonna love this part. One of the lessons was on zoo animals.
Okay.
Right? Which is cool. It's like, oh, we're learning about zoo animals in English. Well, the thing about it is that it's a hotel and there are no there's no zoo nearby.
Yeah.
There's no benefit. Like it's kind of nifty to know, but it's not applicable. And what's going to happen is at the end of that course, the students knew English, but they couldn't apply it to their job.
That's it. That's it.
The whole thing is so important because you can learn English and you can read it and you can become confident, but if it's not focused on helping something that you can do, you're going to come out of that and you're going to be, why did I do all this work?
That's like, I 100% agree with you. And I actually tell my students, be very selective in the types of work that vocabulary that you focus on. So the idea is like that you become choosy. You have to become like super choosy in what you decide that you want to learn. And that's kind of the problem with Instagram or social media in learning English. Teachers select what they want you to learn, and then you learn it. You don't have really the option to choose what topics you want to learn. And I think it's so important to focus on the type of English you want to learn. For example, Michael, he focuses on business English. So he's very and hospitality. He focuses specifically on that. And so, if that's where the type of English you want to learn, you go follow him, you learn from him. But if you don't really have anything to do with like business English or formal English, you're never going to use it, which is
right.
Then you don't follow him. You don't learn from him, because it's a waste of your time. So you have to really be choosy in what type of lessons you choose for yourself. So I completely agree. Yeah.
What are some things that students can do to work on their English right now, as well as their nervousness? And I think you touched on that quite a bit, but I think we should just come back to that again. Because I know one thing that came up that I think was really important to hone in on was that they're not implementing, they're not practicing. They're learning, but they're not practicing. And I think you said something about an immersion environment, practicing every day. What are some things that students can do? What are things they can do right now? They can go right after this live. They can go. What can they do to start?
There's a student of mine recently. She was so scared to. She's in the course and she was so scared to like go on video, it's just something that she never has done before, and so she was terrified, but she did it anyway. So we understand being scared is a feeling, it's an emotion. But don't let that stop you from taking action. Don't let that stop you from reaching your goals. I told another student of mine the other day that feel scared and do it anyway. And what you need to do is look at what's making you scared. So say you want to be a public speaker. If something scares you, then you're in the right direction. It means that you are outside your comfort zone. You know what I mean? It's like you can't feel completely comfortable and then expect to grow. Comfort and growing doesn't happen together. Like it has to be, you have to feel uncomfortable to grow and become better and a better version of yourself.
Okay. What are some activities they can do? So I know you mentioned a little bit like the goal setting, other things. So I'll give you an example from my life. So I used to be, even though I'm a native English speaker, I used to be very shy. One of the exercises that kept coming up over and over, and what really helped me was this concept called service staff small talk. And what you'll find is if you go get coffee or you go to the mall, you go shopping, that you can do small talk with the service staff, right? And what I found is if you become a regular at certain shops, you will become friends. And some of my best friends have been people I met who worked at the coffee shop. I would just go in every day, get the coffee, get some food. And over time, it started from like, do you have a croissants to let's go to this festival together. And even though I knew English, that wasn't my motivation. My motivation was dealing with my anxiety and socializing. And I found that was something that really helped me. Do you have things like that that you found help some of your students that they can do?
You know, I think I summed it up earlier when I said like I'm an introvert. I don't know if you guys know what that means. It's when I appear to be somebody that's like, oh, I love people, but I really try to avoid people as much as possible. And so I always feel uncomfortable when I'm in social settings. I feel drained, and I really have to pluck up the courage to go to events and networking events and so on. So the idea is like I always, whenever I'm feeling anxious, I try to change my mindset. Like again, it's like the whole working with your mind. And then I try to think about what would be the worst thing that could happen, and then think about what good things could happen in that situation. So if you're like scared of speaking in public, for example, or like question yourself, what exactly are you scared of? And like I said, write it down and try to understand yourself. Where is this fear coming from? And there's this thing where when people are afraid, like scientifically, like if you have a phobia, some people are scared of snakes, some people are scared of thunder, like me. And the way they treat these people is that they get them to like be at close proximity of the thing that they're scared of, right? So 1 year ago, I was absolutely terrified of going live with teachers on Instagram. And I remember it was teacher Will that invited me to go on live on Instagram. And he said, just, it'll be fine. You know, you just have to do it. And I did it. And I was terrified. I still get nervous, but it gets better, right? So you just have to take that step to do it, and it gets less scary. So if you're scared of something, just do that thing that you're scared of, and that's the only way I feel you get rid of the fear, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so to summarize, what I understood was the main way to address the fear, and the main way to really work on your English and deal with your anxiety about your fear about your not speaking correctly is simply to do it. And you have presented your example of the Instagram live, right? And you talked about like you were very nervous to go live, but you did it anyway, and you're training that muscle. I'm not sure what the exact term is, but I've heard something similar where it's like you were training yourself to I'm not sure what it's called. I think it's called. There's an exercise. I have to find it later. I apologize, but there, I think I know what you're saying. Is that you're training yourself to do it, even though you're afraid. You just go do it.
Yeah, it's the only way you can get over the anxiety and fear is by doing it, by doing what scares you. That's the only way that's gonna like. And so I don't mean like, oh, I'm scared of public speaking and then I go on stage. I'm talking about taking the steps towards that. So what are smaller steps that you can take? Maybe you can join your local speech club. You know, you go in front of 5-10 people and you talk about yourself. You go live on Facebook or Instagram and you pick a topic, or you go into a group of ESL learners and you go live and you speak about your day. You're taking smaller steps towards your goal instead of, you know, jumping. I feel like that's the best way. But I'm saying if you're scared to do that at the beginning, work your way up towards that goal.
Okay, so take smaller steps towards that goal. Take Incremental steps. Okay.
Incremental, exactly.
Okay. So we're running out of time, but real quick, what are your plans for the future? What are your next steps in regards to teaching English?
I want to be able to help more students grow my business and, you know, be able to just have the means to help to do more. You know, that's my goal right now. And that's it.
Can you give us some examples? So I know, like you talked about the class. Do you have other options coming up? Are you planning on doing any other programs, or is it more focused on this program that you're doing, the live class?
So the class is going to be my main thing. Okay. In about 6 weeks, I will open the enrollment again. I'm thinking about opening, like having a channel on. Having a podcast channel, is that correct? Can you say that?
Podcast.
Sorry, podcast. Yeah.
Podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to have my own podcast and be able to focus on that. But right now, I'm trying to create the best YouTube videos I can create. This is what I want. I want to go live more often like this on YouTube and be able to step away a little bit from Instagram, because you can't save any of these videos and just have it here. I'm so happy to see all my, I recognize all my students on here, you know, Khalil and Julia, Red Brandy, Marley, you know, everybody's here. And I'm so happy that you guys took the time to come here, because I know it's a hassle to leave Instagram and come on YouTube, but I want to do more of this.
Yeah, and I agree that the YouTube lives have different features, and it's really nice that you can actually see the chat, you can see your students. Is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap up?
Just, you know, I'm super thankful that we did this interview and that everybody stayed throughout the whole hour to listen to it. I'm so glad that, like, you know, I met you, Michael, because these are such thoughtful questions, and I know you did your research. So I just want to say thank you. And guys, if you're focusing on business English and you really want to improve on that, his channel name is Michael's Business English. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So Michael's Business English. Can you type that on the WhatsApp?
Yeah, I'll put that in the chat real quick.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so he has a YouTube channel. Subscribe to his channel. He's also on Instagram, and he has incredible content on there. He's just starting out, but he already has such good material. I'm going to be going on there as well to learn, because there's a lot of things that I didn't know about. So it's going to really help me in terms of my business side of things. Like how to, you teach about how you should behave in the business world, hospitality. Could you add any more things that you focus on?
Yeah, so as an example, right now I'm going through a class on, this is interesting. So there's a guy named Ramit Sethi. I'm not sure, he's a finance guy. He does a lot of different classes. He released a class on virtual assistants for executives and managers, like how to hire a virtual assistant. And one thing that comes up, even though most of the students are native English speakers, English still comes up. Language still comes up, because tonality and the word choice that people choose to use will affect how people respond.
Yes, absolutely.
Something I will be bringing up for the next couple of weeks, some of these new lessons that I've learned. So Halima, thank you so much for this call. This was a lot of fun. Like you said, this was very insightful for sure. I think I've learned a lot from you that I had not thought of doing before, especially about the goal setting and the mindset shifts. How can students find out more about you? I know that most of these students are, you know, they're already like following you, but if they want to get on the waiting list for your class that opens up in a few weeks, how do they do that?
So it's the waiting list is on my website. All the information is on my website. If you want to find out more, the weekly videos that I have on YouTube, everything is on my website. And also, like, it gives you a chance to join my email list. If you join my email list, guys, you're able to receive all the information, so you will be in the loop. You'll be able to know what's going on. Okay.
All right, so we gotta get on the website, get the email list, so we can keep up to date, see what's going on.
Yep.
Right. Thank you so much, Halima.
You're welcome.
Thank you, guys, everyone.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Wow, I'm sorry about all that.
Oh, 1 second. I haven't.